Hey, it's John Carlos, and I'm here once again, as always, with my most excellent friend.
Eddie!
There it is. My
There it
always,
is.
my always quietly introduced Eddie, and welcome to our TED Talk.
Yeah, welcome to our twin ship.
Yeah,
we didn't call each other before we came to work today,
we didn't coordinate.
so this is what you get.
Yeah, blue on
But
blue.
yes, but well, and you're wearing yours in the spirit of the
I
movies we're going to
am.
be discussing. Look at that, Wild Stallions being excellent to each other and party on.
And party on, dude.
Dudes.
Um, I guess the impetus for this was the fact that the third movie finally happened and came out. If anyone doesn't know, like the idea gestated many years ago and then became a thing they tried to do, and then they kept trying and people kept saying nah, like going to different places, and it finally happened.
Because Keanu is big Keanu box office now.
And even then, even with Keanu being a box office draw, I know it had a very small budget.
Yeah.
You can tell when you look at it, but also Bill and Ted 1 and 2 were never, massive studio tent poles. So it's in line. I do know that the director has talked about how it was like the budget of like the pilot of a TV show.
Wow.
Yeah, and you could tell.
Awesome.
I know it had a tight shooting schedule, and you could tell they made the most of what they had. I think I read somewhere that like everything they had was on screen. This wasn't a case of like, oh, we shot and we cut this, we cut that up. Like, no, we barely got it all on screen.
Oh, wow.
And it's like, I think it was like 85, 87 minutes. And then you get like the directed by credit. Like that movie is short.
Yeah.
So yeah. But yeah, do you want to just go down and start with the first movie and just sort of
Yeah.
what happens?
What do you think about it?
Well, I don't want to. There's no bias to speak of, but I feel like I'm not biased. I don't want to say I'm biased, but there's movies in your childhood and your upbringing that you love that I don't want to say inform you, but they matter to you, and the ones that you've seen like over and over again. And I can tell you that as a kid, I watched Ghostbusters a lot. I watched Labyrinth a lot. But holy fuck, when Bill and Ted came out, I watched that movie to death. That movie, the first movie means the world to me. Second movie means even more. So as far as fandom goes, it's like I remember I went to my school's little the autumn fest, and I put some ping pong balls in a fucking goldfish bowl, whatever the fuck. But I won an inflatable guitar. So then that year for Halloween, I got a yellow shirt, I got a green flannel, and a red hat, and I went as Bill. I didn't even have a Ted. I just went as Bill. I don't know, whatever. No, that's all I'm getting at is when it comes to certain movies, I'm a super fan, and I happen to be one of those people who thinks that Bogus Journey is better than Excellent Adventure. And it's not a contest. It's not like it's vastly better, but if like this is Excellent Adventure, then like here's Bogus Journey, like that. I don't know. I think it's one of the best sequels ever made. So I've been wanting this third one for a while. But yeah, not a terribly juicy story. I grew up adoring these movies to death. There was a period in my life I could have quoted you Bogus Journey from beginning to end.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, and it's funny because so many other movies that there's cult followings, but there's big movies. There's like Star Wars that like people love, And Bill and Ted was made by someone else and distributed by Orion 2 years later. And the second one was made by Orion. These movies are not they're beloved, but they're not so beloved that when you go to Target, there's a section of Bill and Ted merch,
Right.
It never milked, even as a fan. They made some pops a couple years ago, but over the years, there's never been this wave of oh, you go to Hot Topic, and there's the fucking Bill and Ted, and you roll your eyes because it's they've never milked it. I feel like whoever owns it has never felt like there's been enough of a fan base. But considering the lack of push for the fandom, there is a fandom, and it is something that even without that fever, for me, it's that level of fever. Like I would put Bill and Ted up there with Star Wars to me and shit that really matters to me. So that's where I'm at.
Wow. I didn't know that.
I know we've never talked about this in all of our friendship, and I realized that when we were getting ready to do this video that like, yeah, when Bogus Journey came out and Marvel put out the comics, I used to go and get every single issue of the Bill and Ted comic, and I still have them in like a folder, and not folder, a folder, not a folder. Binder. I had, and they used to sell these like the 3-ring binders with a little sleeve for each comic. First of all, that comic is genius.
Wow.
Yeah, I had all the. I think they were Kenner. I had the action figures when I was a kid. Still have them in a box somewhere.
Did you ever watch the series?
Both of them, yes.
Because there was an animated and then there was a live action, right?
Yeah, and they were both called Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventures. But yeah, I watched the animated series, which was great. Every once in a while, Tracy and I would just be hanging out. Because you ever get a song stuck in your head for no reason?
Yes.
Sometimes we'll just be hanging out, and one of us will be like, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventures. It's a party, that's for sure. Bill and Ted's most excellent adventures. You know, it gets in there, man, because that's what happens when you.
Is it like old Joe Cocker like that? Like,
honestly, that just might be how I've sung it for the last 20 years. But I'm pretty sure I'm not being inaccurate. I'm pretty sure that's how it goes. Yeah, the live action show is garbage. But even as a kid, I was such an easy mark. I'm like, I know this isn't Bill and Ted. I know this guy is a Ted impersonator. But I was just so happy to see
the
them.
Real Ted.
I was so happy to see them on screen. Like, and first of all, that premise lends itself to a show really easily.
Sure. Yeah. We
have a thing. We need to go back in time and talk to, Elvis this week. All right. And Elvis will help us solve this week's dilemma. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I get that.
I had the Bill and Ted cereal that came with the audio cassette holder that looked like the phone booth, and it had and it had the animated Bill and Ted's on it. Yeah.
I didn't even know that. Oh my god.
I was a super dork, dude. Like about this shit. I read the novelization of Bogus Journey that was based on the script. So, because then you're reading all the deleted shit that's not in the movie, which is also in the comic book adaptation. So either the novelization or the comic book, they're both great. I used to collect the cards, the little packs of cards. And the cards had, the card would be like deleted scene. I'm like, ah. And that was like the only way to back in the old days of VHS and beta and stuff, without like fan magazines and stuff, sometimes like your only way of finding out nerdy shit was through the cards that would be like, here's a of like Bill and Ted at the prom with the princesses, or like them air guitaring on like a bus bench and shit.
Oh my god. So now that you're an adult, I mean, have you ever thought about like what was actually like the basis for your fandom? Like, have you had any kind of catharses in the years past, or even rewatching the movies now?
There's two things I picked up on. One organically on my own. The other one I noticed from Movies with Mikey. Do you ever see anything by Movies with Mikey?
No.
He's a YouTuber, and he's good. He's an interesting channel because he has. I don't like when people try to be like super funny or flashy. Mm-hmm. And I sometimes prefer my essays to be really straight to the point, but he has really interesting things to say in his essay, but he mixes them with weird humor, but it's not annoying. Okay. But one of the things that he mentioned that I went, was that like Bill and Ted, the first two movies, especially the first movie, was like the first movie. The characters are so optimistic. Well, they are. I'll get to that in a moment. But it was the last cry of optimism about the future from the pre-grunge era. Like, this was what rock and roll was. And this generation of rock and roll still thought the future could be great. Right. Like, our dirt will be clean and our air will be awesome. And then, like, the 90s happened and grunge happened and rock happened and that idealism was part of the next wave.
Right.
There's a lot of questioning of authority and the next wave of stuff. And I couldn't help think about when watching the newest movie through that prism that, and I'm sure we'll really talk about the third movie later, but I found it really interesting that the third movie, their daughters are just as like jubilant and hopeful and easygoing and like wanting to help. And the fact that we're now going back to 80s and 90s nostalgia, and in the last several years have been absolute shit. And now you have a movie where like, we're going to save the future by like music and bringing people together, and it's hopeful. And isn't it nice that we could all like come together, party on, dude? And like, that's not just intrinsic to Bill and Ted, but that's also, if we're getting nostalgic for 80s and 90s, and that movie was like from 1989, and the themes of that being regurgitated now, I don't think are accidental. So I think that's actually kind of nice. And the only other thing that I kind of picked up on that I never picked up on as a kid, but I'm watching this, I swear to God, I watch these probably about once every year or two. It didn't hit me until somewhere about 5 or 10 years ago, where I'm like, it's just the two of them. Like they don't. There's a lot of things in comedy duos where like it's like tall or short, or fat or skinny, or smart or dumb. Now Ted is taller than Bill, but I would never call them tall and short. In fact, in the first movie, they had Alex Winter stand on an apple box for a lot of scenes. And by the time they got to the third movie, Alex is like, no, like Ted's taller than Bill. Can we just have it like that?
Right.
But they don't fall into any of the smart, dumb tropes. Tall, fat, short, skinny, all that shit. But the one thing that a lot of those have is that a lot of comedic duos, it's always just like the two of them. Maybe it'll be like a girl that one of them likes, but like generally speaking, like Harry and Lloyd just live together, you know, and Cheech and Chong are hanging, like they're always, you know, Jay and Silent Bob, the whole fucking world's against them, but it's always their own little world. And very little kind of comes between that. And I never really picked up on that as a kid, but I think one of the reasons I responded to that as a kid is they don't come off as popular. They don't really come off as losers. They just kind of come off as two buds, and they got their own thing, and no one else really matters. But to each other, they matter. And that's all they really need.
Right.
And that has really stuck with me as an adult, that I really, really respond to.
That's really cool, because it didn't have the impact on me that it had on you. Although I do have the first movie committed to memory. I realized that as I was rewatching it again. I don't watch it every year. I hadn't seen it in quite a while, but as I was rewatching Excellent Adventure, I was like, I know all of this. I know every transition, every look. I still got just as irritated at Napoleon and what a douche he is as I did when I was a kid. Because I'm with Deacon. He's a dick, but
well, he's Napoleon.
That doesn't excuse him, John Carlos.
Well, I know. I'm just saying it fits. Yeah,
it does fit. But I remember thinking, like, if this was what the real Napoleon was like, well, then yeah, I would have abandoned him. But now we'll talk about that. But
and side note, Deacon's delivery is perfect because he's a dick. Oh, it's great.
It's just the way things are.
There is not a bad performance in fucking Excellent Adventure.
I think I agree. I don't have a problem. I don't. That's the thing, is the record doesn't skip for me ever. I just kind of I'll stick it to Excellent Adventure right now, but because I remember watching it, but I don't remember the first time I saw it. It just seems like something that was always on when I was a kid. Like my cousins were really into it. Kids at the schoolyard were all really into it. I mean, you know, I was still like, what was I, like 9 or 10? And we're, you know, by this time we're deep into the age of like VHS and video rentals and cable TV. So it's always going to be on, and everybody's seen it, and everybody wants to see it. And the time travel was still had this weird, it hadn't been played out yet. You know, a lot of people might, you know, talk about how like after Back to the Future Part 3, like the time travel thing is kind of like not for kids. Like, I mean, if you do it right, And if you do it with like that verve and that life, that vitality that kids respond to, like it's fucking exciting if you do it right. If you get too like heady about it and, you know, too worried about the rules, like I love that. One thing that struck me this particular screening was how not plot heavy it was, how the whole movie really kind of depends on you liking Bill and Ted and liking being around them and just being interested enough to watch them change their course of their destiny by just making everybody like them, you know, like just by interacting with figures from history and getting these people to cooperate with each other, to be buddies at the mall and to help them with their chores back at back at Bill's place. And so because they I feel like while they were making the film, they knew that it was rooted in, if we don't have these two guys and their friendship and their ability, like their ability to bring their positivity to because I made a list of like their values. I'm all over the map right now, sorry, but their ability to bring like their core values with them to whatever kind of situation they're in. I just realized as I was observing it, like here are some Bill and Ted values.
Whatever situation they're in.
Exactly. And I wrote loyalty, like totally, like they are incredibly, totally loyal to each other, and they will be loyal to you from the moment they meet you if you're not a dick. So, and you know, and they will, and because they provide that, and I think because people know that when from the moment they meet them, you know, like, oh my God, they might be this and they might be that, but they're cool, you know, like they're decent guys. So, you know, I'm gonna be decent too. I wrote adaptability, just their innate, and also it's not just them, it's something that like the historical figures pick up as they're like acquiring them, that like their strength, each figure's ability to adapt to the situation and just kind of roll with the punches and not ask too many questions makes them, you know, part of an excellent adventure.
Like,
and
I think
love that
they acknowledge how like Billy the Kid is adapting like most, like to,
yes.
and like I don't think Billy would have adapted as well if he didn't have like them as
Billy,
deacons.
you were dealing with the oddity of time travel with the greatest of ease. I fucking love that. It's even pointed out in the script, and that's when I started making my value list. Actually, when they did that, because I was like, "That's another value."
Yes. We're gonna go talk to these princesses. You stay here, and Billy's immediately like, "Well, I got this Nerf football." So
yes.
But,
so
like,
crates.
Playing football with Socrates. Like, I'm gonna babysit him. We're gonna have fun. I got Socrates, and it's never spoken.
And and then the fact that like the next giant thing, I mean, there's a whole bunch of things that happen to them, you know, princesses, and then Bill thinking Ted's dead, and we'll get into all that. But then the next thing that's applicable to as far as their values is like they're about to be executed, and who saves them but Billy the Kid and Socrates, because they're buds. They're gonna be there because if you were in trouble and they knew about it, they would do everything they could to come help you, and it's not even a question. They don't need to like. Whenever people are decent in movies, sometimes I feel like people critique movies now for like going like, well, I mean, why would you do that for somebody you barely know? And I'm like, fuck off, you piece of shit person! Like, because they're a person and because they were decent to you. Like, sometimes that's all it has to be. It's just
that's sometimes all we can hope to do and strive to do is just be fucking nice to other people.
Exactly.
Be excellent to each other.
To each other. I kept screaming it. But and adaptability also leads to acceptance, which is a big point. I feel like they, again, like if you're not a dick, they'll accept you. They'll just kind of like, you know, and just point things out to you, like and I don't know. I'm running out of.
Even when they're talking to someone like Napoleon, who like, or Genghis Khan, these are bad people.
Yeah.
But I like that they even like Napoleon in the report is like explaining his plan, and like,
yes,
we know how I like that they're like, I don't think it's gonna work. Like he just gets upset.
No, and just like, yeah, whatever, Napoleon. Also, but honoring the heart's desires. Like, I like the fact that, you know, it's not really an argument, but it is an exchange where, you know, they have a mission, but Ted is in love, dude. And Bill respects that because, and also it's not just about love, like, you know, like following, like, you know, like a girl or something, but it's also their dreams. And even it even follows them to the end of the movie where they're doing what their initial, when we first meet them, their initial version of following their dreams was, which is playing guitar in their garage and filming each other, and just kind of, you know, just going into this strange circular discussion of like what it is that they require if they want to succeed. And it ends up being this like snake eating its own tail of like, we need this to get here, but we need this to get here, but we need this to get that. And then they just kind of shrug and go, excellent, and you know, who cares? But I love that by the end of the movie, they've grown enough that like it's no longer fulfilling just kind of like playing guitar in their garage only. Like, well, what if we actually learn to play? What if we actually like make a plan to like actually change something in our immediate reality? You know, here we traveled all through time and we like made, you know, like all these incredible changes like to our lives and thusly ripple effect to the whole world in the future and everything like that. But it's like it's so existential, the first movie. Like, I mean, I literally wrote Go-Go and Dee Dee from Waiting for Godot at one point, because there are moments where they kind of pause and reflect on things and ask each other in that voice. But, you know, they're asking highly philosophical questions at times, you know, about just like I love, one of my favorites is just like when they're questioning whether they can trust themselves or not, and Bill just asks Ted, why would we lie to ourselves, dude? And it's like,
and you see Ted think and go,
yeah. So and the last one is just time to play. The last value was just like allowing yourselves the freedom to just kind of like just play, just like, you know what, like
party on, dude.
Yeah, party on, dude. It's not like it may not be all great and good, but it doesn't have to be that bad. Like, you know, we got each other, you know, and if not, then that's cool. We're gonna go over here and do our thing. But if you want to join us, feel like you can. I mean, I feel like that is their exact energy. It's just accepting and it embraces.
You know, every comedy duo, at least off the top of my head, like Dumb and Dumber, the Tenacious D movie, you always have at some point your two buds have a fight over something and they split up and come back together. And at no point, there's a lot of things that like the tropes just aren't there. They don't, so many movies in the 80s that weren't John Hughes movies, still trying John Hughes-ish things.
Yeah.
These guys aren't like waxing existentially about their teenage plight. They aren't struggling over their feelings over another girl. They're not becoming a bully. They don't have any of that shit.
Ted even has like a horrible, you know, like oppressive voice in his life with his father, which is very John Hughes, to have an oppressive parental influence
that can, but not the same flavor.
Well, because it's the thing, Ted doesn't let it in. Ted just kind of stands there, takes it, and thinks, okay, A to B. Like, if I don't connect A to B, then B is going to lead to C, and that means Alaska. So if I don't want to go to military school, I better, you know, get serious and do this and that, and actually take action and do something. And then, of course, you know, the universe, thank God, like boosts up to help them. But I mean, for the most part, I like the fact that he doesn't even let it in. I love the fact that his father is always kind of an oppressive voice until he isn't. But in the first movie, he always is, and that Ted doesn't really ever let it in. He even just kind of accepts it when Frood is like examining him and talking to him about like what, you know, the pressure his father's putting on him because of his own unsatisfying youth and all of that. And just and he's just reeling, he lays back down, just I fucking love this movie.
Yeah.
Another thing yes.
Nittiest of nitpicks, and even then it's not a nitpick because I still get it, but when Ted has that whoa, and then I don't know if they meet it, but they do cut back to his teacher and Missy and Ted's dad.
Yeah.
And I always personally wish there'd been just either in that shot or a tighter shot of Ted's dad processing it. But instead it's just, I don't even think it's meant to be the same moment. We just rolled and you're reacting to it. But it's, the actor's name is Hal Landon Jr. And he's just sort of like doing that same like confused, what's my son doing on stage face?
Yeah.
But that also works because I feel like even in that moment, he wouldn't be willing to admit and process all that. So it's still not going to sink in. And then based on the second and eventually the third movie, we know it doesn't sink in.
Exactly.
For a long time.
Exactly. The only time that actually I find doesn't kind of like adhere to everything that makes me so excited about like going anywhere with these two characters is of course the most dated moment of the movie, which is, I mean, it follows one of the greatest moments of the movie too.
It's a good hug.
When Bill thinks that Ted has been killed and he's just standing there, and it's not like, again, it's not like, you know, Alex Winter is, you know, like, oh, my best friend, you know what I mean? But he's just sad. He's just, and seeing
Ted,
a character who's been so,
dude.
Exactly, yeah. And he's just been so upbeat up until that point that just is like, and I even love the way, like, this group of extras, like, come in and he's just like, get out of here! But, like, I was just like, God, that was funny when I was a kid. But it feels really heartfelt. It works. It lands. And then when he shows up, he's like, dude, and then they hug, and I was like, oh, awesome. And it's the only thing that feels like it isn't who these characters truly are. It feels like it's just kind of like something, a trope that needed to be put in because of straight cisgender male mentality about like how even an incredibly accepting, open-minded, I guess rebellious, but really just kind of free-spirited, optimistic youth can still, you know, gay shame somebody.
Right. Well, even if you say that it might not be in their character, which you could argue, yes, that's true, and that it might have been just something, so they're not, no one can mistake them as gay. Ugh. You can't be just two dudes who love each other. But also, having been this is hetero dude in the 80s and 90s, I could tell you that I used to drop that word plenty of times without even thinking about any kind of specifically homophobic derogatory intent. It was just another word for someone who's being lame. Granted, in that movie, it's happening after two dudes, but like, I could also see it was the 80s, and that's how like guys wrote guys who were cis and did that, and who were hetero.
Right.
I don't think Bill and Ted have the malice, but you could argue, no, we did write that line on purpose, but we didn't think about it, and Bill and Ted didn't fucking think about it. And
I didn't even know what it meant when I first saw the movie. I was just kind of like, oh, I've heard that word before. I've heard it in Once Bitten, and I've heard it in Teen Wolf, but I don't really know what they're talking about. It's, you know, clueless little me. So I was just kind of like, I guess it's something bad. And I just over, like most things that kids don't get, just over my head, on to the next thing. I'm going to watch these two guys I like a lot. Well, yeah, but it does make the record skip for me a bit. And I'm just kind of like, God, I wish.
Yeah, that's the only there. When I rewatch both of these now, it's the only time, I forget when it was the first time, somewhere maybe 20 years ago, you're watching it and you hear it, you're like, and there became this era where all sorts of things that we love from the 70s and 80s and 90s, and you go, oh, that hasn't aged well. There's all sorts of things that just haven't aged well. And some movies are full of them and are far worse. Yeah. You know, I like to mention in fucking Revenge of the Nerds, he rapes a girl.
Oh, God.
And she's great with it. Versus,
she's even impressed.
Right. A lot of things haven't aged well, and at least this movie isn't shock. Like, that's the only, same thing with Bogus Journey. They drop it twice.
Well, I'll talk about that when we get to Bogus Journey, but I'll
save it for then.
Thank you. Because it's the only reason is it just doesn't, it feels like the one moment for them where they don't seem to be completely embodying like all of the values that I listed. And and that's kind of upsetting, but it's not enough to, I mean, I'm still so enthusiastic when I watch this movie. I do still walk away from it feeling like this is, I get the spirit with which everything else that was delivered to me, I feel like it was successfully achieved, you know, like it's not a big message movie, but it is. It's just it's almost like behavior by example, and I was susceptible to it then, and I am to it now.
It's funny that you mentioned the ending, because for the most part, for most of the movie, I would argue they're not really having much growth, but that last scene puts like a capper, and they kind of do. Because I always found it funny that like they never. If the beginning of the movie is we're in class and we don't know who Joan of Arc is, and like we're stupid and you're gonna fail, because I mean, they're lovable, but they are dumb. They have great adjective vocabulary,
Yes.
most resplendent and non-triumphant, but like,
Yes.
but Noah's wife, like, come on, they're dummies. If the thing is, okay, first of all, let me just preface. The original script was just there was no that first little monologue with Rufus was added later. Originally, you met Bill and Ted.
Oh.
He's going to fail class, going to go to military school, and then Rufus shows up, and now we have to go do a thing. So you already have the context going in that like something's going to come for them and put them on a path. But they are just dumb, and they have to pass history class. And as you get towards the end of the movie, like they don't like their history report is, I'm going to let this guy talk now. Like, they don't do the work. Billy the Kid, do some Billy the Kid shit.
And I'm gonna let him talk about like what he thinks about San Dimas. Like
the point of the report is, how they react to San Dimas. Sometimes they translate for people like, oh, well, Beethoven likes slippery when wet,
Right,
but
right.
They essentially, they don't, maybe they learn by experiencing some stuff, but they really don't learn. Mm-hmm. There isn't much growth there. I don't want to say they cheat, but like they put off till the night before to go to 7-Eleven and ask strangers about, Marco Polo. Like, they're procrastinators. And they don't learn anything at the end of the movie, and they get their A. But it's that last scene where after they've been through everything, like maybe now we need to grow up a little bit. Maybe now we need to not procrastinate. Maybe we need to put in the effort and actually learn to fucking play. What I love about that last scene is that last scene was originally not in the movie. That was something that they added later. It was,
oh my god!
Because I think the final scene of the movie was them going to prom with the princesses.
No.
And then
that is John Hughes,
right? And I remember, it's been a while since I heard the commentary, so I forget the specifics of how I'm wording it, but like in the original version of the movie, not only was there not the opening with George Carlin. So it was just these guys. Not like the opening scene changes anything, but it gives you a context of what you're about to see. Because they thought that maybe like, let's give the audience a heads up, like why we even care about these kids, like and what's going to happen to them. But the original movie was just, your friendship is in danger. You need to pass this history report. It wasn't until they went back and wrote the new ending scene that they're like, well, what if we made it about them, their band becoming important in the future? Like when they went and started making this movie, Wild Stallions Saving the Future wasn't a fucking thing.
Yeah.
And
wow.
They came up with, oh, no, maybe it was more than just your friendship. It was the fate of everything.
I fucking love that.
You almost don't, yeah. And if you think about it, that's not a thread throughout the movie. It's definitely a thread in 3 because we know, but that was an afterthought. That was a what if there was more. And that is one of the best, let's fix this, or let's change this, and let's add this scene.
Because I had no clue. Like I'm glad that I'm talking to you about this also, just like given your specific brand of fandom, because I don't know anything about the inception of these movies. I only know what I experienced as a moviegoer, and even the movies, even the old ones in the past. Like I didn't buy them on DVD because they always did seem to be on, and because even though I liked them, I know they never like kind of beckoned to me that way. I just kind of figured like, oh, I'll see it. There was always some kind of new thing, new DVD, like, oh, I'll probably watch it, or oh, it'll be on cable, or oh, it's streaming platforms. But also just having seen them so often, because even Bogus Journey was on quite a bit, but we'll talk about that.
It is worth, they put out a Shout Factory edition that I believe was like disc 1 Bill and Ted, disc 2 Bogus Journey, Excellent Adventure Bogus Journey, and the bonus disc. That edition went out of print, I think. Then they put out the Steelbooks, which is cool, but I don't think the Steelbooks included, I don't know if they ported over the bonus features on the 3rd disc, but I think I read this week or last week that they have reissued the original 2-pack set. So if you care at all about the story of how the movies got made, I highly recommend anyone out there watching the Shout Factory combo set. It's great. But long story short, the inception, if you want to know really quick, was Ed Solomon and I forget the other guy's name, but the two of them, they were Bill and Ted. Like those were characters that they played on stage. It was their characters, and it was like a comedic shtick they did, and they decided to make those characters into a movie. but then ultimately like, let's cast actor, so it's not us, but we're still writing it. But it was they were Bill and Ted. I think it was called Bill and Ted's Time Traveling Van, or Awesome Van or something. But originally, it's like, we're a band. Bands have vans. I can't remember but I mean, because the film was supposed to come out in '87, and then the company went under, and then the movie was in limbo, and then someone else got it, and then they might have put it straight to video, and then ultimately they put it in theaters. So 2 years went by from when it was supposed to come out. But if you go to '87, that's only 2 years away from Back to the Future, and I think the idea of a time traveling car
vehicle, yeah.
So it changed to yeah. But at the core, it was always the characters. It was never like, we have a dream to tell a time travel movie. It was like, we have a dream to tell a movie about these two dudes.
You can feel it, particularly with the first movie, and I think it's incredibly effective.
Yeah. Fun trivia: the two writers are the two Ziggy Picky guys.
Oh my God!
And they have a cameo in each movie. They are the two guys at the seance in Bogus Journey.
Oh.
And they are the two demons in.
I knew it. I had a feeling. I was like, okay, those are either like
it's a robot
Keanu and Alex Winters, like stunt doubles, or somebody special. Like I could tell they're somebody.
In fact, they've joked about how like they're the same characters. Like they worked at Ziggy Piggy, then they got into New Age shit, and then they died and became demons in hell. There's a whole arc.
That's adorable. I like that.
I don't like to believe that though, because I don't believe in transubstantiation from like angel to human and human to demon. But that's just me.
Well, we don't know their story.
I'm overthinking it, and one of the biggest threads in all the Bill and Ted movies is don't fucking overthink it. Don't think. In fact, don't think about it at all, because it all falls apart and makes no sense.
You're supposed to take it at face value. Yeah.
That's one of the charms. In fact, I would argue there are two charms to the Bill and Ted movies. One, the two leads, and two, the sheer who the fuck cares-ness of the script and the story, specifically the beats and the complete lack of logic. I've said this before, and I'm sure I'll say it again in other videos. I've always believed that if you want, it's hard to create set rules for such a broad medium as film. But if I do have one rule, it's that the director's job is to seduce the viewer into the tone of what you're telling. And if the tone of what you're telling is supposed to be rooted in logic, and then your logic doesn't line up, that's kind of your fault. Also, if the tone is fairy tale or fable, and it's and your audience is picking apart the realism of it, you're also like you have to pull people in to what you're telling. And
I agree.
Bill and Ted is a movie that, under scrutiny, is a fucking nightmare of things that don't make sense. But it completely pulls you in to the flavor and vibe, and you just sort of go with it, and that's the charm of it. Like one of the most prime examples, like if I saw this in a Christopher Nolan movie, I would throw something at the screen. But Ted falls down the stairs in his knight outfit, in his armor, and then you see it laying on the ground, perfectly shaped.
A second later, yes.
And then he goes, "What? I thought you're dead." "No, I fell out of my suit when I hit the ground." What? Right. I fell out of my suit when I hit the ground.
And it only took me less than a second.
And I felt, because by the time Bill runs down there, he's already out.
Yeah.
And it also isn't, it's perfectly formed and shaped. Like it doesn't, but it's just the kind of thing where you go, all right.
It's like, what do you want? Do you want Ted to be dead? Like,
yeah, it's just, I mean, the franchise is full of it. Not only, I used to actually have a real problem with the whole future logic of like, well, once we do what we need to do, go back and get the keys and we'll put them back here now. And I'm like, bro, that's not how time travel works. That's impossible. Yeah, think of a trash can. We need a trash can, and there's a trash can. I'm like, oh, that's not how it works. Because I was always thinking about time being like this linear thing. only as I got older did I actually come to accept it, because of,
Really?
in a weird way, because I should be against it. Majority of my life I was against it. It's bullshit. But you have to accept that what you're watching now is not the main Bill and Ted story. Actually, technically, you're watching like a second or a third version of it. So there was already a version 1 where and then they go, and so the keys are there now. And then
so funny because number one, okay,
like this is the second version where they've left themselves the keys. You know what I mean?
It's a story about time travel.
I know. No,
that right there.
I know.
Your own argument about abandoning your rationale.
It's also a Bill and Ted movie, so you're not supposed to think about it this hard.
Yes. The only thing I thought, though, to kind of like piggyback on what you were saying, even though that wasn't the problem that I had with it, the only problem I had with it was the laundry list of shit they have to remember to do after the report. Like I wrote down,
hit record. This movie, hey, Dad, over here.
Yeah. I don't know if I could have remembered to set up the key, steal the keys, set up the trash can, type up the letter for ourselves, the tape recorder, and also rig it to like go off at just the right moment. And also, of course, all the sound and lighting they obviously set up in the multi-purpose room for their report.
No other student had that going on.
No! So I'm like, okay, of course they set that up. Like I can make that up in my head, but I'm like, damn, they must have time traveled like, like a week in advance, just like, and like, okay, we got to go because we know the janitor doesn't come back until 6 a.m. So we've got, got all night, dude, but no napping, okay? No breaks. I mean it,
I just figured it was something as simple as they brought some cassettes and they went up to some techie and they're just like, hey, can you make the lights go do something? Like they didn't program it. They got someone else to make the lights move for them and just make it look cool. Give us some spots. Although to be fair, most schools don't have that.
Right.
Rotating lights that you could program to move and stuff. Yeah.
Well, maybe it was a magnet school. You don't know, but
speaking of, so time travel, that's interesting because that's what's one of the more fun things about like going to see a vampire movie, going to see a time travel movie is what are the rules of this one? Are we doing looper rule, Back to the Future? Are we doing, Avengers with the time stream going back into a singular time stream and creating branches, all that shit.
Yeah.
And to have this one to say like, okay, like with most time travel things, with Back to the Future, with Doctor Who, you can travel back to any point in time. Yeah. I love that with this one, they're like, except you two, because it's you two, the clock is always running in San Dimas. So basically what your physical time thing is at its source is also running. And I'm like, that's interesting.
Yeah.
But there's there's a lot of like I call it just the hand wavy shit, like Ted fell out of the suit. Fuck, whatever. They go back to San Dimas and they go back a night earlier and meet themselves. Fine, whatever. But what makes me laugh is, hey, but if we hit the thing for San Dimas, why are we here, Rufus? And he's like, because it is now in San Dimas.
Yes.
You have to hit one number higher.
Yeah.
Oh, you have to hit one number higher. Huh? Fuck, whatever.
To get to the next day, Giancarlo. We
get
it.
Because when you enter, you automatically enter one number higher.
Yeah, because it's the next day.
Oh, okay.
I thought maybe it's one of those things also like when you're a kid, odd things make sense to you. And I was still young enough, like not at 9 and 10, to really just jump on that kind of.
Like that's older, like because there's a lot of things.
No, I mean like it makes sense.
I don't
as a kid, like I was just kind of like, oh right, yeah, because it's the next day. So if you want to go 2 days, then you have to do 2 numbers up. And if you're going, I mean, I'm immediately just like jumping right on. Like I'm so there for it, and I don't have another thing I'm hugely there for though with this movie. That I want it to be said because especially with the rewatch this time, I was like, oh fuck, just the opening credits. With the breakaway song by Big Pig with the little
I was so fascinated when I was a kid.
Oh my god.
First time in theaters. Because I knew it was about these 2 dudes, and then I'm just watching this going, what the fuck is this?
And yet, as a kid, I know that they're supposed to be traveling around because I saw the commercials and I knew that they're supposed to travel around in a phone booth, and a phone booth, and I somehow knew like that's the phone booth, but like in its primal form, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course the music that they play when they come back back to the future, to hear Robbie Robb's In Time and everything like that. Just the I mean, I love, now that I know that it was shot in 87, like that makes me love it even more, because it does feel so incredibly distinctly 80s, like just that tinkling, echoey kind of, you know, easy sound that's still qualified as rock and roll, though, because you get a guitar riff here and there.
Yeah.
But I loved the way the future looked. I loved that everything was like in this beautiful kind of like metallic indigo, and that it was so the 80s version of the future. But like Back to the Future Part 2 is, but in a, you know, but in its own way. But it so looks like the 80s. But I and also just the fact that like there's this odd communal acceptance of everybody who's around them, and they're just kind of like taking things as they come, and, you know, checking in with each other, and just kind of doing like that when in Rome thing, like with the guitar strum, with like everybody else is doing. And when they're like, oh, they're waiting for us to say something, and they just kind of speak from the heart and wing it.
Mm-hmm.
But it comes straight from who they are, and it's what we've already said several times, which is be excellent to each other and party on, dudes. And that's enough for those people in that particular time. But it always, something about that music cue when they first like step out of the phone booth, it's like I can feel layers being pulled over my heart. Like it's like it makes me feel very, very fragile, and I don't know why. I don't know what it's about, except for the fact that it's maybe it's about, because it's about the future, and it's about, if they get everything right, this can, like the rest of the world and a lot of the movie is so loud, and so, you know, there's a lot of friction and adventure, yes, but, you know, a lot of like close calls and that kind of thing. And here in the future, everybody's just chill. They're not even really doing anything. They all just kind of wander into this space. Like none of them are like carrying a notepad or on their phone or anything like that. They just kind of like wander in and just kind of accept, you know, oh, look, it's the great ones. Let's all, you know, acknowledge their contribution to uniting us. And maybe it's that. Maybe it's the fact that like they get to, in essence, meet their destiny and even see that it's achievable. There's something about that maybe that feels, it evokes all of that for me. And I think it has ever since I was a kid. So I just wanted that to go.
It's a nice, sometimes I think there's just certain, just from a songwriting standpoint, there's just certain keys and certain chord arrangements.
Yeah.
And when you combine that with the imagery itself too, then you've got, before I forget, I just want to, because it's coming out of left field, but when I was talking about them as a duo, one of the fun things I like about this too is that they are essentially, for the most part, the same person, right? Like they have the same cadence, they have the same energy. One's not drastically different than the other. However, I do like that there is, to me, a slight difference between the two of them.
Yeah.
Because they do make, I love that they, well, sometimes one will say a sentence and they'll both end it at the same time. They're constantly finishing or saying the same shit. There's a lot of saying the same shit at the same time. I love that duality of them. However, I do like the idea that Ted is slightly dumber and all his impulse is a little more.
Yeah.
He's seeing the princesses going, let's go. And Bill's like, dude, it's a history report, not a babe report. Right. They're in the room and they're trying to study. And Bill's the one who's like, dude, Alaska.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that tends to be just enough for me to differentiate the two of them while still allowing them to be the same. So props to everyone involved for making that happen.
One more thing. I can't envision, certainly in the first two movies, Ted ever telling Bill to shut up.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't want to get into the whole alpha beta thing, but
Ted tends to give Bill reasons to say shut up more also. Like, first of all, I think it's so fucked up that Bill's dad comes in the room and I love that we have a movie where a dad gives money to his son and not subtly like makes him a lie, is very blatantly like, I want you to leave so I can fuck this like 19 or 20-year-old lady in your bedroom, and that look, she's closing the door and she's sitting on the bed, and the look his dad has as he closes.
Gross.
But the fact that Bill's already kind of grossed out by it, and then Ted's just like, "Hey, remember when I asked Missy to the prom? Shut up! Like, your timing sucks. Like, you're rubbing salt on the wound here."
Even just like pointing out what's just happened, going like, "Now your dad's going for it in your own room." It's like,
Bill doesn't really do that. Bill doesn't do that to Ted very often.
No,
but also
I did.
Ever the optimist and taking everything in stride. I love to like, "Shut up, Ted."
Yeah.
that fucking.
Yeah, that's gold. Also the fact that this was the first time, this particular viewing, even though I felt like I knew the entire movie like the back of my hand. This viewing was the first one where I actually heard the line when they're looking at the princesses, where Bill, when he kind of, relents and says, "What is it, Des? My God."
I don't remember that line in the movie.
No, she's mewing up a storm and she won't stop. "Come here." She's just like 6 feet away from me, but she won't come to me and get love rubs. I have to go to her. Sorry, cat owners, you know what I'm talking about. But anyway, they're looking up at the princesses, and I heard Bill for the first time say, when he says like, "Okay, fine." He says, "You're the ladies' man. What do we do?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, Ted's the ladies' man?
Well, Ted asked Missy to prom. I don't even think he's that much of a ladies' man. I just think he probably just goes for it more. I guarantee you, he probably almost never succeeds. But I bet you he asks and tries more.
I think Bill, you said it with like Bill maybe following his impulses a bit more. Like I think I have to agree with that possibility between the two of them, because another thing, like just to get it out of the way, I know, because I knew everybody was like getting crushes on Keanu and everything like that. Keanu just looked like a big, tall scarecrow to me when I was a kid. My eye was on Alex Winter when I was like 9 and 10. And when he fought Joan of Arc, and you get to see his midriff with his abs and everything like that.
With that 80s midriff shirt.
Jesus Christ. It undid me in a way. Because guys dressed that way, and even though I'd seen like Johnny Depp wear his in Nightmare on Elm Street already, I hadn't seen anybody do anything really athletic in one before. And the fact that he was like, he's fighting this, he's fighting Joan of Arc, and he's holding his own. It did something for my little 10-year-old heart that I don't know, it just worked for me. So yeah, thanks Alex Winter.
Mine wasn't as drastic, but I always had a thing for Elizabeth in that first movie.
Okay.
Because Diane Franklin.
Yeah, love her.
Come on.
Better Off Dead and
Better Off Dead. Is it fucking Ferris Bueller? It's just one scene, but
wait, which scene is she in Ferris Bueller?
The guy's on the phone at the payphone. He's like, "Hey, give me to someone else." He's like, "You ever seen the movie Alien?"
"Hi, how's your bod?"
God. That's her? Oh my God, you're dying? Yeah.
Oh my God. Well, maybe I'll see you this weekend. Bye. Oh my God, okay, I have to rewatch that movie. That's another one I watched all the time, but she looked different or something. I always thought of her as Monique.
She's a fucking cutie patootie, and I like her. Yeah, she's great.
No, I love her. And then later she was in, I think the second Amityville movie, where she played I think they had an Italian director, and so everything was sex. And she had this brother that they moved into the house together, and before the house ever infected the family, they had this really incestuously flirty relationship. Like, they behaved the way a guy and a girl who lived like next door to each other and have always really liked each other, and they got on their first date for the very first time. That's their chemistry when they move into the house, but they haven't even been possessed by the house yet. So you can imagine where the story goes when he starts to get possessed by the house, and she's just kind of like, "Okay, I'll just take off my shirt." But but I've always loved her. And she was also maybe America's first Karen in The Last American Virgin. A character. Her name wasn't Karen, but she was a fucking Karen.
No, but
if you've seen the movie, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Giancarlo, maybe don't see it.
30 years since I've seen this movie.
It's not an easy movie to sit through.
maybe 25 years.
Yeah, it's not easy to sit through, but she plays against type and she does it very well, but you won't like her after the movie.
I met Diane Franklin at a convention last year, and she was super sweet.
Oh, that's so great.
I love when you meet like one of your little childhood crushes and they turn out to not be assholes. She's great. She's so great.
I wanted to ask you something though, because was she in fact like in the credits for the movie Elizabeth? Because IMDb has her listed as Joanna and has Kimberly Cates listed as Elizabeth. Yeah, so it looks like they swapped not identities, but swapped names for the two movies that followed.
I almost prefaced when I said Elizabeth, and I'm like, I don't know if she's Joanna or Elizabeth.
She's Joanna.
I just picked one and went with it.
She's listed as Joanna, but she plays the one who ends up with Ted. And the other two movies, Joanna is with Bill, yeah, Elizabeth, and they never address it. Like, yeah.
No, I just think it's kind of a oops. You know, bad things.
We had a lot going on.
Bad things happen in credits all the time. They misspelled one of the creators of the New Mutants in the credits for the New Mutants. So like, you know, shit happens.
Oh my God, things never change. All right, let's move on.
The one thing I never noticed until literally me watching it last week, I never noticed that Ted's dad's got like giant NRA jacket when you go to his house.
Oh yeah.
And he's mad at Ted and like, pack your bags. I was like, huh. It's just a subtle thing that just, you know, not all NRA people act like him, but it definitely does it's a piece of costuming that informs me of so much more.
I also appreciate a difference in their parenting though. Like I like the fact that we get that moment where they're going into the NPR, the two dads, and they so obviously don't get along. And it's like this wonderful juxtaposition against like, oh my God, these two are so incredibly, undeniably like best friends, like, and not just be best friends. Even in the first movie, they're like each other's world, and here their fathers are the antithesis of that. They're like, you know, we're introducing nitro to glycerin,
right?
And they even receive, and they even receive when they get into watching them do their report and everything. They receive it differently. You see Bill's dad almost like immediately mellow. And like even shushing him, like,
whereas Ted's dad's still like,
it's still like, what the
what
is
is
that?
Yeah.
And
it's funny that he blamed Bill's dad, you know, for maybe he raised your son, yet your kid under your methods turned out literally the exact same way.
Yeah.
And I like to think that maybe there's a period where Ted, when he was younger, wasn't like that, but by meeting Bill, they kind of became similar. But when you get to Bogus Journey, you see the flashbacks. Like, no, even though it's the dream sort of nightmare flashbacks, they're just the same as kids, you know.
Yeah. Sometimes fathers and sons are alike, and sometimes they're not, and sometimes it's a gray area, you know. Like, I mean,
yeah. Now, another thing about going back to the time travel. One of the other things I find a little interesting. One, it's interesting that they chose to do that. The time is still running. So that your time, you don't get to go, you have to go back and do the report literally. So keep one on your watch. Another thing that's so, again, don't think about it, but for this video, I allow myself to think about it. And when I do think about it, you don't hold it against the movie because that's just the flavor. But the fact that time's already happened, right? Like in the future, Bill and Ted have already become wild stallions. Made the music, fixed the future. But then when Rufus at the end explains, like, okay, well, that's why it was so important that we make sure you guys pass. Well, what do you mean? You already passed because you're from the future where it's already happened. So how is this even a conflict? Because it can't exist because it's already occurred. Fuck it, whatever. I don't know. But like, we don't. I would never make a time travel movie and go back and be like, hey, we need to go. The Beatles, we need to go back. Well, what do you mean? The Beatles already fucking happened. No, let's go back. Remember before you have to make sure that Stu Sutcliffe meets John Lennon. Well, they did meet. No, but they might not. No, but they did. It doesn't make any sense. In fact, the dude, Clarence Clemens, the floating guy, the main floating guy, he's like, the departure point is imminent. I'm sorry, is the past also running again? Because like, what do you mean it's imminent? you're living your life. Nothing's imminent. We don't sit here now and go, you know, Hitler's invasion is imminent. Like nothing's. It's done. I don't understand. The future to me makes no sense in this, where the present that's already present can be affected by something that might happen, but has already happened in the past. Do you follow me here?
John
No,
Carlos.
just answer me. Do you follow me?
I follow you.
Yes, it makes no sense. However, when you're but when you're a child, you're like, oh no, if he doesn't go to the military school in the band, then the future won't happen. And then you get to age 10 and go, huh? It doesn't matter.
This is where my innate, I won't even say ability, I'll just say my innate tendency to be, I guess, patient, as you would put it, or forgiving.
Just go with no, you just go with it.
No, I don't even go with it. I go like, oh, well, there must have been, they're in the future, so they obviously have technology, so there must have been something that showed up, like blipped in like some of their technology somewhere that showed them there is a possible future where Bill and Ted don't pass that history, or where they don't come together and are like, okay, we need to find out what was the crucial point where they don't come together and they don't like unite us, because obviously we're still together, so it's not like hopeless.
Obviously you still are.
Obviously we are, but that means we have to act fast. So we have to find the point, the crucial point that could have been the catalyst for everything to kind of veer off into that potential future. And as long as we continue to work toward that point, maybe our future or our present, which is the future, will remain, the movie's future will remain the same. And as long as everything remains the same, we know we're on the right path.
But
does that make sense?
That makes sense.
Okay.
But even within that logic, like we find a certain point that's, I think they even call it the separation. Their separation is imminent. But that's the thing is, you're talking about finding a point, but they're speaking about how it's imminent as if it is like occurring. You know what I mean? Like just fuck it. But again, it's kind of why I like these movies. Is they're like, yeah, whatever, fuck it. Same thing with you travel through time. You take Socrates out of his time thing. You take all these people out simply by taking them to another time period, let alone a mall, let alone talking about how important they are to history, and then taking them back would severely alter, but just like, no, whatever. It's just fun. We're taking people out of time, and they're going to do a report, and then we're going to take them back. Whatever. But if you were not making a Bill and Ted movie with this charm, if you were making a more serious movie where time travel mattered, someone would be like, what the fuck? If you take Socrates and put him back, you've created everything's doomed, basically, because every butterfly effect for every person you put in, each individual's timeline will now be totally different.
Unless those things were always destined to happen for this reality to happen.
Ooh. Good one.
Are you ready to move on to Bogus Journey? Because I actually have something to piggyback on that thought.
I mean, I have several.
If you have several other things to say, then please say them.
No, just one little thing that I noticed this time that I never noticed before. Maybe I'm a dummy for not noticing this, and then we'll move on. I literally laughed out loud with this one. When they go into the jail cell to break everyone out.
Yeah.
I never paid. I mean, I know. I just noticed that Joan of Arc was praying to herself, and I just was thinking about, like, the messenger and how, like, in the last days before she was burned as a heretic, like, she was talking to God. Yeah. She's literally in a jail cell.
Yes, she even says merci because he answered her prayers. Exactly. Bill and Ted.
Well, but I don't mean. I mean, it's funny when she's praying. You mean
when they first come together? When they first come together?
I'm not talking. No, when they first come together, that's funny. She says merci. Okay. Oh yeah, yes. But in the jail.
No, she says merci in the jail cell.
In the jail cell, yeah. There's a lot of little things like that. Like Tracy was thinking about Freud's holding the corn dog. And as things are going badly with the girls, he points the corn dog, limp. There's little. Oh, it's great.
I love that Freud has no game.
I love it. But you may call me. No fucking joke. I could have, and when I was a kid, I could have watched the whole movie of Billy the Kid and Socrates. Because they spend the most time and they form their own bond. I love them at the mall. I love him firing the gun, and he's got a fucking little cap gun. I just like, we're gonna walk over like, hey, we're from history.
And the fact that like one of the girls, like they're both kind of like tittering to each other, but one of them's like, oh my god, those sandals. And I'm like, in what world would this happen? But I don't care.
Sigmund killed their game. Like, oh, it's so good. that whole fucking mall sequence is amazing.
Oh yeah.
Fun
Oh
side
god,
note, yeah. It's been about 3 years now, but Tracy and I did a road trip to Texas. But on our road trip, we went to a bunch of Breaking Bad locations, and we went to a bunch of Bill and Ted locations. And I'm happy that Ted's house still looks the same. Bill's house does not. The Circle K mostly is,
right,
updates, but the actual curb and like the door, everything's all the same. But the mall looks like most malls now. It's fucking dead inside. But the actual like escalator, when they get up and like, hey, Socrates, watch your robes, like that escalator is still there. So it's nice. That made me happy. If anyone ever wants to go to was it Albuquerque? No, Phoenix. Yeah, Phoenix. Bunch of Arizona stuff. Anyway, it's worth it. There's some good shit to go do. All right, so at the beginning of this video, we talked about how we're going to be talking about all three, but this conversation ran really long, so we're going to end talking about Excellent Adventure. You can please join us for the second video where we talk about Bogus Journey.
That's right.